And that's not all. You can get the ShopX Premier Kitchen Collection in 2 easy payments of 182,475 Naira. Place your order now and we will deliver the entire collection for free, anywhere you are in Nigeria. But
we're interrupting this program to bring you a live telecast. Our regular programs will continue shortly. Please stay tuned.
Initiative to road infrastructure, primary health care projects to the ambitious new Enugu City project and the drive to attract investments and revamp moribund assets. We'll also discuss the strides made in the power sector, funding the state's budget, and efforts to improve the ease of doing business in the state. I'm Sean Wakimalo, a broadcaster with the prestigious, highly decorated and leading television network, Channels Television. I'm delighted to be joined by my colleagues in the industry in this media chat, a very esteemed and distinguished media personalities, the famous Babajide Kolade Otitoju of the television continent at TVC. Thank you so much, Babajide, for being here.
Thank you.
And the very brilliant Rotus Odiri of the Arise News Network. It's good to have you, Rotus.
Thanks for having me, Sean.
And our dear Napoli Uko of the very vibrant Afia Television, doing great job representing the region here and beyond. Thank you so much, Natalie.
Thank you so much.
And the big voice of television, Ladi Akeredoluwale from Enugu Television. Ladi, it's good to have you.
Thank you very much.
Together, we shall be engaging Governor Mbah in a candid conversation to provide you, our viewers, with an insightful analysis and the governor explaining himself on what he has to offer the people of the state, at least telling us what he has done so far in the last 1 year under his leadership. Ladi.
Thank you very much, Sean, and let me use this opportunity to welcome our host and, of course, our guest at the same time, His Excellency, the 5th democratically elected governor of Enugu State, Dr. Peter Mbah. Your Excellency, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Ladi, Natalie, Babajide, Sheun, and Rotus. I also want to welcome you to Enugu, the coal city state. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Excellency.
I guess I should set the ball rolling, Your Excellency, and I think the topmost question is that anybody who has taken a look at your CV will see that before now, you were a highly successful businessman in the private sector, running your own things your own way. Why did you decide to leave that comfort zone and jump into what is popularly known as the muddy waters of politics, with all its twists and turns, and how has the experience been, having done so in the last 1 year?
Thank you very much, Ladi. That's a good question. So if you take a look, since the advent of this Fourth Republic, you would realize that we have in Enugu State had successive governments under our party, PDP. And a lot of those governments have done great stuff. They've continued to build on the infrastructure. They ensured that salaries were paid, and basically made sure that things were going incrementally. So I took the view that that operating system that we've had in the last 24 years needed to be disrupted, and we needed to innovate, right? So if you look at the innovation X curve, in my view, I believe that that system has gotten to the peak of that X curve. So we needed to do things. So the demands of the time we are in require someone whose experience, both in the private and the public sector, would be able to deal with that, that innovation that we're talking about. So for example, if you look at the same operating system that I referred to, it has served us to a point where if we did nothing, or if we do not do some radical things, we may be consumed. So Based on that appreciation of what the demands of our time require, and also fueled by my passion to serve, I had to step out of the comfort zone you've referred to ask the mandate of my people to serve them. And which was why, if you look at when we set out to seek the mandate of our people, we had some catchphrases that sort of resonated with the people. We talked about disruptive innovation. We talked about tomorrow is here. And we've since been able to try and show that the incremental growth model, or the marginal growth model we've had in the past, it's no longer able to sustain us as a people and even the economy. So the tomorrow is here we refer to talks about the immediacy. It speaks to the immediacy of the things we have to do if we must attend to the future of the people of Enugu State.
Interesting. I think that was a good way to start, giving an overview of why you had to leave all that very comfortable arena and come into politics. But I think we should begin in earnest in the security sector. That is a major. The Constitution made it clear that the role and the primary responsibility of government is to secure the lives of Nigerians. So in that line, I'll allow Babajide to begin.
My question is, can you say, because from the beginning you made it clear that you do not want to hear about the sit-at-home syndrome that many people see as a big disincentive to business. Can you say with finality that you have achieved your aim of defeating the sit-at-home syndrome? Can we say that across the length and breadth of your state, including the hinterland, that the sit-at-home syndrome is now a thing of the past?
Thank you. So one thing that was very clear from when we were going out to campaign was the absolute clarity of vision where we wanted to take our people to. And recall I had said something about disruptive innovation, which meant that the model, the trend we did in terms of our growth rates over the years, we felt that that was not sustainable and that was not going to take us to the promised land. So we said something to our people. We said we're going to, the vision we have is to grow the economy from the current level of $4.4 billion to $30 billion. So that's not marginal, that's exponential, right? So we also said that we're going to achieve a 0% rate in our poverty headcount index. That is coming from a 58% poverty rate to 0. So those would require you to do things differently. And we recognize very early that the growth we're talking about won't come from just public sector. It has to happen through private sector investment. And of course, one of the major things that poses a huge threat to the spirit of enterprise is criminality, right? It also, as you know, drains the life of a city. So we recognize and realize that if we must go beyond posturing, if we must just go beyond the catch phrases and deal with the substance, we had to address the insecurity challenges, which was why within 72 hours of my swearing in, we made some consequential pronouncements. We made it clear that the so-called illegal sit-at-home order, which essentially has largely held our people. It's almost like a stranglehold to our people. We felt that there's no way we could go out there to attract businesses or investors to Enugu State if we still have a situation where some criminals out there would sit somewhere and tell us the days in the week that we must go to work and the days we must sit at home. We just felt that that was unacceptable and was inexcusable. So we had to confront that frontally. And essentially what we did was to mobilize the security forces. There were a couple of radical things we had to do. Introducing the distress response squad. Making sure that we empower and enhance the capacity of our security agencies. And above all, we were also, because we have zero tolerance for crime, we also had to embark on introducing a technology platform that allows us to have a line of sight to whatever is going on in the state, so that even where you still have some breaches, we have the capacity to be able to solve it. And that's the real thing we believe that is important in security management, the ability to be able to identify, track, resolve crime promptly. And that's the sort of capacity we've built right now in the state.
No, I asked a definitive question about the sit-at-home syndrome. Have you successfully defeated that?
Well, I think we have resigned sit-at-home to one of those bad memories, things that existed that we do not want to even think about again. We no longer have the sit-at-home. I'm sure you would also bear a testimony to that. This is today, as you know, is a Monday. It's a working day for everybody in Enugu. Yes. People are going about their business, working. So it is not something we want to remember because it's devastating. It's done a lot of destruction to our psyche and even to our economy. So that's something we've put behind us.
And perhaps just to follow up on what Babajide asked about the sit-at-home. Sit-at-home is not only peculiar to Enugu State, it's a regional problem. And when we wonder, what did you do? And those who will be asking the question, maybe it's cosmetic, maybe it's just momentary or temporary. Because there are those who also will say this wasn't about guns and bullets. It could be mostly political and some form of carrot. Can you give us an insight on what you did, if you think that it has been nipped in the bud?
I think you did say something, that the primary responsibility of any government is the security and welfare of the people. And I think that that same sentiment is shared by a number of my other colleagues who are also in the region. So, it will be difficult to explain your reason for existence if you cannot, at the minimum, provide security for your people, right? So we know that this is above politics. We needed to rise beyond party or even tribal sentiments to address what is critical and what is a primary responsibility. And I think that's what I could say that also happened in the region, where we had to come together as a people and tell ourselves the hard truth, that look, if we must really move or even go a step further and achieve what we have promised our people, there is no way we can just pay lip service to insecurity. So we collaborate a lot, we share intel, and that is essentially where you need to go. We also had gone as far as even having a common command and control center where intel is shared and actions are promptly taken. And in some instances, there is also a joint operation if we have to now narrow in on these criminals, because we know that, okay, there's nothing separating Enugu from Anambra, and that these guys can easily step out of Enugu and go into another state to hibernate, only to come back and hit. So we felt the need to collaborate and work in partnership to resolve this. Because
I will imagine that the agitation was what some people will say that has led to that. That phenomenon of sit-at-home, which became so popular and crippled the economy. And I hope that maybe our viewers can get more insight into whether this was largely criminality or political. But if you are able to answer that, also, there are pockets of killings that we have heard in Uzowani, LGA, in Nimbo and Oba. And what are you doing to really deal decisively with some of these violent activities?
I think if you have also followed up events, you would recognize that there is no genuine agitator who believes in sit-at-home. That doesn't exist. It is not, I mean, think about it. Imagine depriving your kids, your children, the opportunity to sit for a national exam, denying them the thousands of learning hours that they would have in school. Imagine making it impossible for your people to develop infrastructure, because the contractors also would be impacted, right? For the days that they don't have to work, so they have to build all that in. So I don't think there is any person who is interested in his people or who wish his people well that would advocate for a sit-at-home, because that just destroys, it affects our work ethics, it impacts on our children, it affects our economy. So what we're dealing with, again, I don't think you would ever have a society where you're going to have zero crime, right? So what is important is that the state develops the capability to be able to identify, track, capture, and ensure that justice is done to whoever commits crime. And that's essentially, so we, as I said, we have zero tolerance for crime, and the people know it. So if you commit a crime here, you take steps to go kill somebody, we would do everything. We would do everything necessary to ensure. You may have followed the news recently where I had to make some pronouncement offering bounty to whoever could come up with an information leading to a particular breach of security that we had. And that's the position we take here. We frown at crime, so we have no tolerance for it.
Atlee.
All right, still in line with your question concerning the pockets of killings in Isuzu and Uzowani, we've had people chased away from their farmlands, and some people have linked this insecurity to land, possibly thinking that these suspected headers want to assume ownership of these lands. So I'd like to know what your government is doing in the area of land management in the state, and those killings, the specific answer to those killings going on in those local governments.
So for the challenges, we know that there are some hot, or if you will, dark spots. And what we have done in the states, it's even a lot more fundamental to addressing these challenges. So if you look at the partnership we've just recently entered into with the Navy, we're now siting a Nigerian naval base in Uzowani, right? That construction is ongoing now. We have the first deployment of the Navy that is around there now. This is essentially to ensure that that tension is doused. Also in Isuzu, we've also had the army deployed there, so we're looking at setting up an army barracks there. We have the first set of deployment already there in Isuzu. So these were tension that existed, but we've been able to douse this tension, and we've been able to get our people back to their farmland, okay? And ultimately, we believe that we would still have, and we're working on that, we need to be able to get our people to understand that, you know, you have to deal with, there's just no way you can have the people whose life depend largely on subsistence farming. There's just no way you can deprive them from their farming and you, header, continue to do your business without those tensions. So we are, if you followed up what we've done recently, is to come up with a system where both parties can coexist and they both do their businesses without one affecting the other, and that's the system we're trying to achieve ultimately.
Your Excellency, let me at that point also then ask the question about, because you talked about both parties doing their businesses, and I know that there's been quite a bit of controversy about ranching.
Yeah.
Some of those who own the lands say that the whole brouhaha is about, as Sean pointed out, taking over the land. But very recently, the State House of Assembly put in place a ranching bill, which I assume at some point will be sent to you for signature. And then on the other hand, you have the communities, some of them complaining that they were not carried along in areas to be designated as ranching. Now, can you clear the air with what the government's plan is with regards to this ranching and how those who own the land and the herders stand to benefit so that the controversy doesn't continue?
I'm glad you pointed that issue out. We just recently had the State House of Assembly pass the bill of ranch management. And so what that is, and it's very important, we've had to engage our people. We've had series of town hall meetings, engage the traditional rulers to get them to understand the import of the ranching bill. So if you are going to have the herders and the farmers cohabit, because you cannot trample, one cannot trample on the other's right, right? And where your right ends is largely where the other's right begins. So what we've done to resolve that is to designate areas where you're going to do ranching, essentially an enclosed area where you can't have your cattle out of. And this ranching is largely going to be a marketplace, okay? It is beyond just where you have pastures for cattle to feed. It is also where we're going to build a modern abattoir, we're going to have a feed mill, we're going to have a proper market, okay? And it is not exclusive to any one set of people. Our people are also free. This is a trade, it's a business, which is does not exclude anybody. So it's not designed to only be for, say, the Fulanis or indeed one tribe. Our people are traders. And what does it entail? Buying and selling cattle. We are very good business people. So we're trying to also create an opportunity where everybody can play. We're talking about a market size of over 50 billion naira here. And there's no reason why our people can't play in that market. We consume a lot of cattle here. So we're going to do a modern ranch where we're going to have all the features of any modern ranch anywhere in the world. So you're going to have the abattoir, you're going to have a veterinary clinic, you're going to have the feed mill and all that. So, and that's essentially what that bill speaks to.
We're going to be wrapping up quickly on security so that we can move on to Brutus.
Yeah, so I think, Your Excellency, the economic backdrop is always a good context within which to talk about security and so on. When you talk about raising GDP from 4 billion to 30 billion, I'd like to put that against the context of in Nigeria as a whole. In the same way Sheon asked you about the regional challenges with Sit at Home, with what you're trying to do. So, my question is basically how much of these security issues are economic, right? Inflation as of April, year on year in Enugu is 29.93%, right? It's below the national average at 33.69, but it's practically 30%. Food inflation in Nigeria is about 40%. In Enugu is 41.4, which is higher than the nation's average. And Kwara, Kogi states are 48, 44. There are states that are much higher. But when you put the security situation within the context of cost of living and the incentive to want to gravitate towards crime, how much of that is taking up your attention to where you want to, reduce the incentive of going towards crime by improving the economic metrics of the state?
So we realized that we had to disrupt on several fronts in order for us to at least be able to impact on some of the indicators you've reeled out. So what is happening is the growth. I mean, talking about a growth of 4.4 billion to 30 billion is a sevenfold growth in a horizon of 7 years. If you do the calculus, that's about 27% compounded annual growth rate. That's massive, and the weight is not lost on us. We're indeed mindful, and we had also done our numbers, so we didn't just pluck the 30 billion from the blue. We understood clearly what it would require to get, and in fact, if you look at some of the things we're doing across all the other sectors, it's largely connecting the dots, to be able to take us to that growth level. So the reason we had paid so much attention to insecurity was because it has a major impact. Now, a lot of the growth we've talked about is going to come from private sector investment. And Enugu has a great brand equity. Enugu is not just a city of yesterday. We're talking about a city of over 100 years old that has played a lot of roles in the economy of this country and become the administrative headquarters of a lot of governments, right from when we were the southern. It was the administrative headquarters of the southern provinces, the eastern Nigeria, the east central Nigeria, Anambra. So it's still in this. So Enugu, it's a state that is consequential. And largely what we believe is that with the steps we're taking, we want to bring her back to that preeminent role. So deal with insecurity, attract businesses to come, but those growth, even though they may be driven by private sector, it has to be enabled by government. So what that means is that all the indicators, for the ease of doing business, and including the sub-indicators, building the infrastructure, making sure the environment is secure, and also basically making sure that you have rule of laws, the enforcement of contracts, the procurement of your permits and setting up your businesses, that all that is easy for you to do when you come to Enugu. Now, our hope, if you talk about food security, we see agriculture beyond food. We see a lot of growth coming from that sector, which is why the first thing we did when we came in was to say, look, we're not just dealing with agriculture as a ministry. We immediately changed the ministry from just being agriculture to agriculture and agro-industrialization, because we're also interested in value add. So we're going to scale up production. We're already doing that by enhancing the capacity of our local farmers, but also making the environment convenient for private sector, for the large commercial farmers to come in and invest. So that's essentially where this growth we're talking about would come from.
So I wonder whether we should just ask His Excellency this question. I know it's an emotive issue in our country. State police, where do you stand?
Again, I think is a function of nomenclature. People call it all sorts. But the truth is that do we need a unified or a centralized police? I think that's the question we should be asking ourselves. In my opinion, I think a centralized security system is the best. It is what is practiced in other climes, and it's been so effective. I mean, go to the United States, if you go to a county, if you're a stranger there, perhaps the first person that would confront you is the county cop there to ask who you are. So they get so close, they know who you are, they know you. So I think the issue of talking about state police, I think is a no-brainer. We should really be thinking of a decentralized police system. We can decide what nomenclature to ascribe to it, but I want to call it state police. But we do need to have a decentralized security system.
I want us to wrap up quickly on security and move on to water. But as a rider to what Babajide asked, and we've seen some very direct and deliberate action in the direction of what you have. You move quickly on banning and ending sit at home. You rolled out a pilot scheme on the distress response squad. You also set up a command and control center for effective surveillance of the state, bringing technology. You also pushed for the establishment of a naval base in the coastal area of Oguruguru in Uzo 1 LGA. You also went ahead to push for the siting of army barracks in Isuuzo in the northern border of Enugu State. And you have also set up the Enugu State Security Trust Fund, which was actually captured in the laws of 2020, but wasn't really activated. Yeah. How far do you want to go in ensuring that, well, you don't want to call it state police, but the decentralized police system? Yeah. How far do you want to go with it? Because we've seen some state government literally replicating their own state police structure, their own security apparatus, and some other empowering traditional rulers within their state and local government and local council to also have their own sector of some kind of policing. How far do you want to go in ensuring that the police system is decentralized?
So we've not been left out even in those community settings of policing. In Enugu State, we have the neighborhood watch, we have the forest guards. Okay, so we have also, as you may have also followed recently, I was in Austria, in Vienna, where we signed a memorandum of understanding with the Austrian government to set up a K9 unit here in Enugu. And so we're working on that essentially to, all this is all designed to deal with the security. So how far are we willing to go? So all these institutions we have here, whether it's the neighborhood watch, which is quite structured, or the forest guard, the real thing that is required in order to get these various bodies to be efficient is the extent of capacity and empowerment you give them. And that is the discussion I'd like us to have, to say, look, should we really empower these local institutions that we already have the framework, and to ensure that they can bite? So it's not just backing, but that you've allowed them to be able to deal with these challenges without really waiting for orders or instructions to come from Abuja. That's the key question we really need to.
So in some way you feel a bit handicapped, because some governors have complained that they are just, they are not really, they are not chief security officer like they call them, yes, because they are really handicapped. Do you feel like that sometimes when you need a swift action on insecurity in Enugu State?
So we've had a very good working relationship with perhaps the law enforcement agencies here, and that's why we are we're already thinking that even in terms of the cost outlay of managing, the decentralized security system, we've already started absorbing a lot of those costs, because we step in instead of just being on the fringes or just wait for something. We get interested in working with the central system the Central Police to understand how we can, help to also empower or enhance their capability to fight crime. Because ultimately, that is what we have taken an oath to preserve, the security and welfare of our people. So it's not something we would be passive about or to sit back and feel helpless about. I mean, it means so much to us, and in fact, a lot of, so just beyond that primary responsibility, it would even be almost impossible for us to accomplish the campaign promises we've made to our people if we don't address this. So
let's take a final one. Sorry, hold on. Let's take a final one with. Okay.
Let me link this. Even the projects that you have in mind are impacted by security. And I know that Shehu mentioned the issue of water. It was easily the most eye-catching promise you made during the campaign, which is, we'll provide Enugu with water within 180 days. And people said, no, it's impossible. You can't do it. Now you did. But then, a lot of those infrastructure have been vandalized by some of the criminal elements that you referred to earlier on in the interview. And I wonder, the nexus between security, which Rotus talked about, economy, Shehu mentioned the fact about state police and so on, and then the battle you are having with control here, essentially with forces that don't report to you, but who are supposed to manage this crisis. I'm wondering how you are dealing with that nexus, because that is something that is impacting directly on your ability, seemingly, to fulfill the promise you have made to the people, and who don't want to hear, oh, well, actually, this is the problem here, and, I'm handicapped, and so on. How are you dealing with that?
Again, talking about infrastructure and the challenges we have with vandalism, stealing, and the rest of it. Yet we gave ourselves a time frame of 180 days to be able to deal with the water challenges too, which again is so this is a problem that we've had to endure over the decades. We didn't just say 180 days because we felt that it was a low-hanging fruit that can easily be notched. We did say that because looking at the wish list of our people, we knew where water ranked on that wish list, and we were in a hurry to make sure that it got ticked off from that wish list. So we of course had to again deploy the disruptive innovation despite all the inherent challenges. So with water, what you would notice is that we've accomplished quite a lot. In fact, for context, let's imagine before we came, and one of my most depressing moments during the campaign was, sight of seeing children carrying buckets and cans in a queue, buying water from tankers. Okay, so we just didn't think that was acceptable, in society like ours. So we had to move, of course, the production volume. We were talking about a production volume that was just paltry 2 million liters per day. We had to move that from that paltry number of 2 million to 120 million liters. So in terms of water supply, we have more than enough water to supply to the people of Enugu. And however, we're still having to deal with the challenges you just mentioned, where we're trying to make sure it gets to the last mile, you know, making sure that every home turns on their tap and they have water running. And that's where the challenge is, because beyond just dealing with the fact that, you know, they vandalize these pipes as you're installing them and they steal them, you're also dealing with replacing old asbestos pipe that are now, you know, they are brittle and corroded, so they cannot stand the water pressure. So we've now had to, you know, open the ground to replace those old asbestos pipe, and also make sure that even where we have buildings affecting the reticulation line, we're not dealing with that, we're redirecting them. Because the option we have is to say, we'll start pulling down houses. But again, our job is to make life easy for our people. So where we can avoid doing so, we, by all means, will redirect the pipe and make sure. So, and that's what we're dealing with now. And we're, of course, hoping that we're going to continue to work with the security agencies to ensure that they protect these public utilities and these public assets.
All right. Let's exit security now. Rotus has one question.
Just a follow-up. I guess your feedback channels with the people. I guess, what are you hearing? Because, you know, it's the people of Enugu that will tell your story. Just really quickly, you know, Rise News were in Kigali 9 days ago for the Africa CEO Forum, and you can walk around there 2-3 a.m. in the morning and feel safe. And the indigents, I vacationed there in late 2022 before even going there for work, and so the indigents will tell you that Kigali is a safe city. You've got police station. What kind of feedback are you getting over the past year from the people on the changes that you've made to security and so on?
Oh no, so don't forget where we're coming from, and I'm sure you must have also, you know, you must have heard this across different channels. We were dealing with a situation where our police stations were constantly attacked. It was almost on a weekly basis. Our checkpoints were attacked, our policemen were killed, our armed forces were killed, and their arms carted away. So that was where we're coming from. And, you know, so it's very easy for us to forget, and of course I don't begrudge anyone who may not be able to remember where we're actually coming from as a people. The truth is that we've made tremendous progress in the area of security. We believe that whatever minor breaches we have, we're able to contain them and we address. And so the feedback has been great, not particularly from the people of the state, because again, one of the things we did very earlier on, few hours after my swearing in, you recall that I immediately came and signed an executive order 1, which is the Citizens Charter. That Citizen Charter mandates me to engage the citizens of the state, to give my scorecard every 3 months. So we have a town hall meeting where we basically tell the people of the state what we have done, how much more of their money we've received, what we have used the money for, and all that. So the feedback has been great.
All right, let's exit. Interestingly, Ladi drove you through security to water route. But water is very interesting. I mean, it's perhaps not a conversation that you will have in governance in Nigeria, because it never gets that kind of attention. A lot of, if you look at the deficit that Nigeria, most states of the Confederation, people have in water is very, very abysmal. And when we wonder what government is doing, for 2 decades, the people of Enugu State they've suffered over the issue of water. But I'll allow Natalie to hit us with questions on the issue of water.
All right, so I'd like to take it up from where you left. The question I've always had at the back of my mind is, why was it so difficult for previous administrations to actually secure water in Enugu State? You were able to at least secure the generation and certain level of distribution in 180 days. What was so difficult to achieve, Your Excellency? You can clear us on that.
Well, I guess the key thing, what we did was, first of all, we had to dimension the problems. We had to have also, so if you were to craft a strategy, you need to be able to do some trend analysis. You have to have baseline data and understand the way things have evolved over the years. And so we did all that. So it was clear to us where the pressure points were, where what we needed to address. We looked at the upstream, the midstream, and of course the downstream. So we identified all that. So when we committed to 180 days time frame, we also knew what the long lead items were. We knew those things that if we didn't begin to front load, it was going to impact that time frame. So we set immediately forth at dawn. We had to start pre-ordering. We had to start, so it's a fast track model. So it's almost like if you're going to think about innovation, you could think about innovation as doing something routinely, but just becoming better at it, growing marginally. Or you could think of innovation as doing something radical or disruptively. Okay, so just changing things from the way they had been done before. And that was the model we adopted. We felt that we couldn't do an incremental model. So if we were going to do an incremental model, it would be growing from 2 million liters to maybe 5 million. We needed the total daily consumption for Enugu Metropolis was 80 million liters daily. So we needed to at least grow to that point and even build buffer, which was what we did. So it was basically, as I said, dimensioning the problem, thinking through it, knowing how to fast track, and also, most importantly, assembling the right team, making sure you have the right people who would execute. Because with the best idea, with the clarity of thoughts and with the right direction, if you don't have the team that will lead that process, you're still going to be stuck.
So, I mean, maybe a follow-up.
Yes.
One of the problems that you have mentioned, you said about 200 houses have been built on water lines in Enugu State, and you feared the issue of demolition. Well, how are you going to resolve that? If buildings are presently on the waterways, on the water lines, how do you resolve that? Or what are your plans in resolving that?
So, except it's absolutely necessary that we couldn't rechannel or redirect the channel, then we have to basically bring that building down. But so far what we have done is costing us more, and in some cases we've had to ask those who violated the building rules and codes to absorb that cost, so that of course because the alternative would be to pull down those houses, which is something we would be very reluctant to do. So we have continued to redirect and to ensure that the water gets to the last mile. So we're doing aggressive reticulation as we talk now. The idea is to deal with the tertiary parts, because we've got water up to the secondary line. We've dealt with the primary line, which is from the production point to the reservoir. We've also dealt with the secondary line from the reservoir to the headers. Okay, now dealing with the tertiary line from the headers to the households, different households, it's where we're now having challenges, because again, as I said, having to deal with all these obstructions. But we're determined, and we're not unwavering at all.
So, I like how you've spoken about water almost like electricity or oil and gas. When you talk about generation, the last mile, and you just talked about the tertiary lines to homes. And I know we'll get to electricity down the line, Enugu being the first state that has been given regulatory oversight over power, Ekiti and others followed, but you were first. It costs money to treat water. It costs money to distribute it. We've been showing, there are videos showing of you touring sites and the amount of infrastructure. What about the billing of water? I want to get your thoughts on, you know, if you think about normal utility bills that a household gets, you know, power, electricity, water is one of them, right?
Yeah.
Is the state, are you going to shoulder that financial burden? Are you going to track how much water is being used, and what's your vision for how it's going to be billed? Because, as I said, it has to be treated. It's got, you know, there's a cost there. And you just talked about so how down the line, how do you see that working out?
Well, that's a great question. The truth is that we're going to ensure that we continue to produce water, and we continue to produce more than enough that our people require. But I agree with you 100%. Water is a bankable sector. It's not something you shouldn't be able to sustain, right? And that's essentially our plan in the downstream. We expect to outsource that. We expect to bring in private sector to manage that. But again, because we know if we had to leave the burden of production on the private sector, the cost may be prohibitive. So which was why we intervened in the production side of things, and of course in the midstream. We know that once we've stabilized this tertiary line distribution and we've gotten significant part of our city covered, we will bring in, because we don't want them, because of their investment outlay, to impose unbearable bills on our people. So we would eventually outsource the downstream, and to make it sustainable for us, that's the way to go. So the management of the downstream will be
quickly, just my fear when Rotus was asking the question is that the people at the bottom of the ladder usually get the brunt. Rural water supply. I mean, the people in the city, in most part of the city, the metropolis, they will get by somehow. But what incentive are you giving to the rural people to get access? They've suffered almost 50 years of this perennial water problem in Enugu State. Quickly, so that we can take Natalie before we go on break.
In fact, for the rural, we have modular systems. We are not actually addressing the rural water system the way we've addressed the urban water system. What we're doing, which is under our, we have an agency that is responsible for rural water supply and sanitation. So we are essentially building modular water supply system for the rural community, one that is sustainable, and as you said, that doesn't impose a huge cost on them. So that's is not going to apply to most rural areas. Yes.
Natalie, you signed out to break with your question.
All right, thank you. Thank you. So in the area of acceptance is a major challenge that sometimes is overlooked. Before we start talking about security, I was going to talk about the acceptance of the modern cattle ranches. We've seen people protest, so many people express some kind of displeasure because they are, for lack of better words, frightened by some of these Fulani herders. So when it comes to the water infrastructure, what is the government doing to let the people of Enugu know that they have to accept this water infrastructure as theirs, that they have to also be on the lookout for people who may be trying to vandalize some of this water infrastructure? And also, has the government made any progress in finding out who exactly is behind some of this vandalism that we're seeing? An area of acceptance, what measures are being taken?
So the people are not really interested in telling them about their problems, okay, or what has been responsible for their living conditions over the years. It is your responsibility, and I see that as my responsibility as someone who has been elected to serve the people, to communicate. So we have a responsibility. Even if they haven't accepted, it means we haven't communicated well. So we still need we have some work to do on our part to continue to engage. It's just like the ranch, management thing you've talked about. We also recognize that we still need more communication. We need to get the buy-in of the people. After all, democracy is a collective work. You can't go it alone. You have to carry the people along. And that's what we're doing. We're going to continue to do that to a point where people take ownership, understand how going to vandalize or burst or break the pipes affects you and indeed affects some other person. Again, we also believe that there are some entrenched interests. We've tried to explain to them, we've held series of meetings with them. the entrenched interests, those that have benefited from the status quo. It's our job to ensure that we get them to understand that you could still deploy your assets into other business models. It's just rejigging your business model. If you were using your tanker to provide water to homes, there is also, Enugu is a beehive of construction. So you can as well begin to use the same tanker to provide water for construction companies. So there are 101 other things. You can reconstruct it to go to the farmland, and so that it's just trying to get their buy-in, and we're working on all.
That's a good time for us to take a break, a water break indeed, since we've been talking about water. So everyone, we will be right back. But one thing is very interesting. For a government that did almost 30% of its budget directed into one sector, education. He says he wants to build smart schools. What does it mean? Ambitious indeed, isn't it? We'll be right back after this break, everyone, and talk our conversation in this media chat with Governor Mbah of Enugu State. Be right back, everyone.
From the campaigns, the governor of Enugu State, Dr. Peter Mbah, never left anyone in doubt that he came prepared for the job. His vision is to grow the state's economy within the next 4 to 8 years from $4.4 billion to $30 billion, ensure 0% in poverty headcount index, and position the state as a premier destination for business, investment, tourism, and for living. Recognizing security and welfare of the people as the primary purpose of government, the Dr. Peter Mbah administration, working in concert with the security agencies, waged a tenacious war against insecurity, including the illegal Monday sit-at-home and its associated violent crimes.
From Monday, June 5, 2023, there will be no observance of any sit-at-home in all the nooks and crannies of Enugu State.
The governor personally went around the state, mobilizing in Enugu against the illegal order. Today, even the National Security Advisor, Malam Nuhu Ribadu, attests to the restoration of security and order in the state.
Before the coming of this administration, unfortunately, but that was what was going on, police stations were being attacked. Law enforcement people were being attacked. People were giving orders. They will be sitting outside selfishly. Those who are not even in Nigeria will sit somewhere in the comfort of the countries where they are living and giving instructions that people should not go to work. We want to thank the governor of Enugu State. He's done a wonderful job, and also tell people of this state to support him. He is doing a good job.
The state, under Governor Mbah, released a fleet of security vehicles to launch the pilot scheme of the District Response Squad, which full complements will ultimately comprise over 100 high-tech patrol vehicles with security surveillance cameras capable of facial and number plate recognition. The administration has completed a purpose-built high-tech command and control center while equally deploying high-tech surveillance facilities across Enugu, which are linked to the command and control center. To secure the coastal areas of the state and boost security in the state generally, the Governor Mbah administration is partnering with the Nigerian Navy to set up naval base at Ogrugu, Uzowani local government area, and also with the Nigerian Army to set up barracks at Isuzu local government area in the northern border of the state. Government's seriousness in overhauling and repositioning the education sector and its infrastructure is underscored by the allocation of 33% of the entire budget to the sector, the highest anywhere in Africa. The government is currently constructing smart schools in the 260 wards in the state, while the pilot project is already up and running. This is designed to provide world-class education for children, including those with special needs, starting from age 3 through creche, nursery, primary, and junior secondary education. Each smart school has a clinic, ICT center, e-library, science laboratory for both primary and junior secondary schools, tech laboratory, center for robotics, studio and interactive boards. Before now, lack of safe and clean water made Enugu unconducive for living and businesses, as attempts by successive governments to address the challenge failed. Mbah had therefore promised to restore water to Enugu metropolis in 180 days. Unrealistic as it sounded during the campaign, today, Mbah has lived up to the promise through sheer determination and massive investments in water infrastructure. On November 25, 2023, exactly the 180th day from his inauguration, Dr. Peter Mbah commissioned the ultra-modern 9th Mile 247 water scheme, which has, together with other overhauled and reinvigorated water schemes, raised water production capacity from the hitherto occasional 2 million liters to 120 million liters daily. This is way higher than the about 70-liter daily water needs of Enugu City. Coal City is now enjoying pipe-borne water, while massive reticulation, fixing and expansion works are ongoing. In October, Governor Peter Mbah flagged off the construction and reconstruction of 71 urban roads and construction of 10 strategic interlocal government and interstate roads to open up the rural areas